Tabletop role-playing games. You've probably heard about a few of those. Well, maybe just Dungeons & Dragons, I guess. A tabletop role-playing game, or TTRPG, is a pen and paper style of gaming where you and your crew sit around a table, or on a sofa or floor or wherever, and roll dice and do math and fight imaginary goblins. Yes, it's some of the most nerdy shit you will ever experience. One of these tabletop RPGs is a franchise called Shadowrun. It's Cyberpunk. It has elves and orcs. William Gibson hates it. There are many Cyberpunk TTRPGs out there, and this is one I never actually got to play when I still did this kind of thing. I did play a lot of the Bubblegum Crisis TTRPG, and that's definitely a wild cyberpunk time. But I never got to run in the shadows with cyberpunk orcs and elves. But I did play a lot of Shadowrun on the Sega Genesis. But that's not the game we're talking about today. We're talking about the SNES game. A game I only actually got around to playing here in late 2024. I never got around to playing it in my youth due to what I thought was going to be a finicky pointer. And the SNES gamepad plus finicky pointer sounded like a real bad time to me. But finally getting around to it, it wasn't nearly as finicky as I thought it would be. But we're definitely getting ahead of ourselves. So yes, today we are going back to the Super Nintendo, it's been a while, to engage in some cyberpunk shenanigans. We're gonna wake up on the wrong side of the morgue, shoot some vampires in the face, talk to a flying dog, and recruit a headbanging fox girl mage. I'm Richard, this is RPG Fortress, and this is fucking Shadowrun. Let's finally fucking play Shadowrun, you guys. Shadowrun is a cyberpunk action RPG for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It was developed by Beam Software and published by Data East for North America in 1993 and Laserbeam Entertainment for the silly little island known as the UK, also in 1993. I lived in Croydon for 10 years, I can call it silly if I want to. Shadowrun was one of those games that was released first in English-speaking territories and then in Japan after the fact in 1994. Beam Software was an Australian company who released a load of Shadowrun-adjacent titles like Back to the Future for the NES, Caesar's Palace for the PS1, and Australian Rules Footy for whatever. The game is loosely based on the Shadowrun novel Never Deal with a Dragon, which I actually started reading years ago but never finished because I lack focus due to a host of crippling mental disorders. So yes, this video game is based on a novel, based on a tabletop role-playing game which is inspired by William Gibson's seminal and genre-defining, and probably my favorite novel ever, Neuromancer. Cyberpunk's a bit more in fashion today than it was back then, so you all probably know what it is, but in case you don't, cyberpunk is a subgenre of science fiction that involves themes of dystopia, post-apocalypse, computers, hacking, dirty tech, body adaptation, body horror, artificial intelligence, capitalism run amok, and other relatable issues that are kinda on the edge spilling over into real life. Some examples of cyberpunk and some of my favorite media are the aforementioned Neuromancer, Ghost in the Shell, Battle Angel Alita /Gum, Akira, Blade Runner, Snatcher, RoboCop, Bubblegum Crisis, Cowboy Bebop, Signalis, Valhalla, and more! I absolutely love the gritty and dirty technology and locales that abound in cyberpunk. That struggle between humanity and inhumanity. The internet being this actual realm that your brain can visit. I just love it. Some of it's a bit anachronistic by today's definition, but those themes are always on my mind. Shadowrun starts with a, wait, why is the logo squashed? They got it right on the box. Why is it squashed in the game? On the main title screen, no less. This looks really amateurish. Why would they do this? Anyway, Shadowrun starts in a morgue in Seattle in 2050. Some morticians are dumping off a body of a dude who is apparently brain burnt. That's what they call it when you're logged into the internet and you die. They leave the body and they go off to do mortician things. These street docs didn't do a very good job as this guy is not dead. He climbs out of his cabinet and remarks that he doesn't remember who he is. As the game progresses, we slowly put together the puzzle of who you are, what you were doing, and how you got to where you are. The storyline and setting of Shadowrun is dingy, dark, and grimy. The cyberpunk aesthetic is perfectly captured. The world is a dystopian shadow of its former glory, with derelict buildings and semi-abandoned structures littering the map. The population is suitably hostile, some NPCs will basically tell you to fuck off, while enemies are constantly in your face. There is no transition to a battle screen, enemies just spawn in while transitioning areas. This does a real good job of making the world seem that much more hostile. The world is pretty open-ended, leading to the feeling that you're actually in control of the investigation into your own cold case. You'll find plenty of people to talk to in your search for answers. The game has a keyword system, allowing you to ask NPCs about a variety of topics. As you learn more keywords, you'll be able to use them to do loads of interactions. Asking someone about firearms will occasionally open up the ability to buy weapons, asking a Shadowrunner about hiring will give you the chance to hire them, and asking the right NPC about plot-related terms will sometimes move the plot forward. The world building in this game is pretty astounding, provided you have the patience to sink some time into it. If you like open-ended worlds with lots of exploration, you'll have loads of fun piecing together the story. But if you want something a bit more linear, you'll probably get a bit annoyed by the lack of concrete directions. But for me, just getting out on the dingy streets of Seattle is adventure enough. Yo, the combat in this game is kinda bad. Combat in Shadowrun happens often and is usually a breeze, with caveats. Combat is real time for the most part, and you have a small arsenal of actions that you can engage enemies with. Your weapon is a gun, and you point the crosshairs and you shoot. Easy as. Spells are chosen from a list in your menu. Combat pauses here, but nowhere else. But instead of casting them from the menu, you bind said spell to the spell button, and when you return to combat, you hit the spell button and drag the cursor to the target. The cursor is slow. My main gripe with the game is the cursor. Yes, it's not as finicky as I thought it would be, but it's slow and it moves poorly. When you hit attack or spell, your crosshairs or spell cursor pop up, and dragging it around is worse than dragging your balls through a nest of fire ants. It's slow, it's inaccurate, it is almost wholly useless. It almost looks like this is a mouse cursor, and that you should be able to use the SNES mouse, but no, you can't. You can only use the D-pad to drag around the cursor. It's real bad. It's ballsack in ants bad. Now, someone on the internet has recently done a hack that allows you to use your mouse with the ROM of the game, but I wanted to do an old school playthrough, and I just used my 8-bit do SN30 Pro Plus for the classic, i.e. broken, experience. This cursor drama also appears outside of the combat. The world of Shadowrun involves a lot of exploration and talking to people and interacting with the environment. And when you hit the interact button, just like in combat with shoot or spell, a cursor appears and you drag it to whatever you want to interact with. And all of the foibles are still there. If you are right on top of something that you want to search, it's not so bad. But the second you need to search something that's not one single pixel away, the game turns into grapple with the D-pad. Leveling up is a fun time and eschews traditional experience points for karma points. Karma points are used one-to-one when increasing your stats, abilities, and spells. You earn karma points by killing enemies, but not always, and not always a lot. Your first couple of increases will only cost 1 or 2 points, but by the time you're halfway through the game, a lot of the increases will cost up to 15 points. Farming doesn't always work because, like I said, defeated enemies don't always yield karma points, and when they do, sometimes it's only 1 or 2 when you need 15. The push and pull of leveling up can lead to a lot of experimentation. Do you want to go full combat, full shaman, full decker? I'd recommend doing a little bit of everything because it's all pretty useful. Money can be a bit hard to come by until late in the game when you are literally sucking it out of corpo accounts in the last couple of dungeons. So until then, you will be juggling weapon upgrades, armor upgrades, cyberware, and hiring runners all on a tight budget. And all of this stuff is also important, so you can't skip on any of it either. My main gripe here is that your guns are forever, armor is forever, and cyberware is forever, but hiring Shadowrunners is not. You can hire up to 3 Shadowrunners to join you on your trips through Seattle, but if any of them die, they leave. Also, if they're with you for X amount of time, they will also leave. I had a handful of times when a runner would straight up leave me in the middle of a dungeon, leaving me weakened and scrambling to get to safety. Like, imagine hiring a plumber and he leaves halfway through fixing the toilet, and the only way to get him to finish the job is to go back to the pub and hire him again. Then you gotta walk him all the way back to your house, and maybe you get shot on the way. Someone needs to convince these hired killers to stick it out and finish the job. The Shadowrunners, not the plumbers. Well, maybe the plumbers. Let's fucking hack the Gibson, you guys. Another fun part of Shadowrun is using your cyber deck to hack various computers you find around the world. You'll usually find these in corpo buildings, and you'll want to investigate each and every one. They're kinda like big involved treasure chests, but instead of just clicking and getting an item like you would from a treasure chest, you get to enter the motherfucking internet. When inside the Matrix, the camera swings around to this top-down view of Jake. The maps are these big purpley tiled rooms where you walk around on a grid map. Some of the tiles have ice under them, so get your icebreaker ready. Your icebreaker is spamming the search button. If you successfully destroy all of the ice and unlock all of the locks, you will often find data, big stacks of new yen, or you'll just unlock elevators allowing you to continue. The Matrix scenes are decently fun, but a little bit goofy. The idea of doing Neuromancer-style net dives is really cool, but it's just not implemented very well. The hacking scenes in the Genesis Shadowrun are a lot cooler. But hey, finding 28,000 new yen is pretty sweet, so bring on the goofiness. The graphics and music are fine. They both sit somewhere between average and above average. Neither seriously impressed me. The locales and everything look great, but the characters and enemy sprites are a little bit basic, especially for a SNES title. And what's up with the reused portraits? There are only a couple of unique portraits. A lot of the portraits are recycled between NPCs, villains, and Shadowrunners. Even some of the Shadowrunners use the same portraits. The locales look great. Dingy bars full of grime give off an unsettling atmosphere. Claustrophobic alleyways leading to derelict apartments create a tense climate, and immaculate corpo complexes make you feel like you're lost in some sort of capitalistic hellscape. The game really nails that cyberpunk look and feel. The music is arranged well, but the output is not great. Like, the tunes are suitably dark and tense, they are arranged well and fit the setting, but they just lack oomph. And the SNES sound chip is incredible. There's no reason that the tracks should feel this restrained. I think a bit more time in the oven could have transformed this soundtrack into something that is definitely a lot more memorable. Shadowrun for the SNES was a great time. The cyberpunk aesthetics were right on the money. The setting was suitably gritty and dingy, the story and characters were dark and mysterious, and the gameplay was surprisingly robust. Between the combat, dialogue system, and Matrix hacking, I never got bored playing this game. Combat could have been a bit deeper, as I felt that sometimes I was just standing still and hammering the gun button. But all in all, this was a good time. I found myself trying to get upgrades whenever I had some free money, unlocking a new dialogue option made me feel accomplished, and exploring this little but large slice of Seattle was very rewarding. In fact, I enjoyed this game so much that it made me go back and rewatch Ghost in the Shell for the 4,000th time. That movie is still real good. Shadowrun, cool. I've been Richard for RPG Fortress, thanks for watching, see you next time, and don't forget to hug a cat. Goodbye.